What's up, sons? It's Blind Red with Son of a Tech once again, and I'm having power supply issues. I woke up the other day to my Threadripper build just having the lights on the motherboard on, and it wouldn't power on, and it shut down overnight at some point. So I tried to power it on with the power button, nothing happened, and it was time to start troubleshooting. I'm going to go through some of the basic tips and hints on where to start with troubleshooting power problems or power issues right now. I know there are some other videos you can check out as well. If I can link some in the description for some more detail, I will. We should be able to cover everything right here though. Stick around. So once you have the motherboard out of the box, you can hook everything up and try to power it on again. If you don't have onboard power and reset switches, you can always use the front header and grab yourself a screwdriver, like so, and trip the power pins on the motherboard to test. That will let you get going. If you've never done it before, you can always look that up as well. So the other thing we can do is pull all of the memory sticks, except for one, and check that and pull all of the storage devices off, including your M.2 drives, to try there. So we've done all that already and we didn't get the board to power up, so the next step was to test the power supply. So to test the power supply, I have a couple components here that will make it easier. So the first is going to be a SATA to fan header, and next is going to be a 24-pin jumper. You can also do this with just a paper clip, etc., directly onto the 24-pin, and that's another way. The next thing we're going to need is obviously power, so we have that ready right here. And this was the bad one, remember, so I'm going to go ahead and make sure it's in the off position and plug the power in, and then our next two steps is going to be hooking up the SATA to a fan. We're going to use the CPU fan right here as an example. And then we're going to hook up the SATA to the power supply. And then next, we're going to hook up the 24-pin to the 24-pin adapter. Oop, we need the other 4-pin here. 20 plus 4-pin. Once we have that all hooked up, we can hit the power button and we can see that the power supply is now working. Oh wow. So the reason I say wow is that during previous to this demonstration, this power supply was not working. That's why we have this 750 watt over here, was because this power supply was not working at all. Didn't really matter because once we got down to it, the motherboard wasn't working either. So I'm not sure what's going on with this power supply other than maybe loose connections, etc. going on in here. And we'll have to look into it a little bit further. So I was going to switch over and show you guys how to test this power supply and show it working with this same setup. But obviously we don't need to do that, and everything kind of throws me off just a little bit more. So let's go ahead and disconnect all of this and move on over to testing the motherboard. Well, we will verify just for fun real quick that this power supply is working as well. Since we're already testing, we might as well test this one. So we'll do the same process. We'll hook up the fan, the CPU fan here, to this 750 watt EVGA power supply. I'll leave a link to the unboxing for it for y'all as well. And then we will hook up the 24-pin. So now that we've done that, let's go ahead and make sure the power supply is in the off position first. Plug it in and then power it on. And our CPU fan turns on here, so we know that this power supply is currently working as well. So the next step is going to be plugging the motherboard up, making sure that we turn off the power supply, etc. So I'm going to go ahead and plug the CPU fan back in. And then we will plug the 24 pin into the motherboard and the CPU powers. This motherboard has two. It has an 8-pin and a 4-pin. So we need to plug both of them up, as well as the 4-pin on the back corner here. And then we will turn on the power supply, and you guys see that we do get the blue LED here. And if I hit power, I hear a click on the PSU and nothing happens. Here's where things get a little interesting though. Let's say I turn this off and I pull the CPU pins or CPU power here for fun. And we turn the power supply back on, hit the power button, our CPU fan will spin up. So I do know the 24 pin on this motherboard is good and there's no shorts or anything. My assumption here is that there's some sort of short with the CPU socket and or the two additional CPU power fans. I did reseat the CPU again just to verify that I had it seated correctly. I mean, it was running for weeks. For over a month now. We did the build, I guess, a month ago, the test build, and it's been running no problem. This is going to put me behind on, unfortunately, all of the Hyper-V training stuff I was doing, because I did have Hyper-V running on here. And I did already try the BIOS flashback, so we've gone through that process. I can do a video on that later as well for you guys. And we have gone through all of the rest of this troubleshooting, and this is where I'm stuck. I am curious as to why this power supply is working again, because it was not, and that's why we ordered this one. But now that explains that most likely, yes, we have a bad motherboard. And I've reached out to ASRock for assistance on this as well. It's a big bummer because we were supposed to be taking this out to PAX South in a mod in this Equilence case back here on the 13th. I don't think that we're gonna have time to complete it now, unfortunately. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. I just don't think I'm gonna have time to complete it. Okay, so why were you, and for fun, whoa, that's in the off position. Okay, so that's no good. This power supply is in the off position and still holding power. Okay, yeah, no, not plugging that in. Off position unplugged is still holding some sort of power on it. Off position, this one is plugged in. Yeah, no shorts here. So there is still something wrong with this power supply. Or the cabling. I do not trust this power supply at all. I'm assuming this is probably what blew the board up then. So even though we did pass that test, there are other things you want to take into consideration there, guys. If you guys didn't see that, essentially what I did is I was like, well, I'll go ahead and test this one. I had it unplugged and in the off position, and it's still holding and outputting power through the 24 pin to the board, because when I went to plug the board in, the lights lit up on the board almost immediately. Almost immediately. So that's not a good sign at all. Something's going on funky with the internal stuff there. All right, so that's going to essentially wrap up testing your power supply or testing with power issues or for power issues. We had some unexpected turns there, which threw a wrench in my expectations. That AX860i did not pass the test originally, and then when we got to the point of going ahead and saying, well, let's test it on the motherboard again, with the power switch in the off position and unplugged, it was still holding a charge and passing that charge through the 24 pin. So there is something inherently wrong with that power supply, and I have a feeling that unfortunately when it went and whatever happened, it took the motherboard with it. Now, it could be a CPU. The reason I don't think it's a CPU is in most cases the CPUs don't have issues. At least they're just a lot more sturdy than the motherboards. The motherboard connections will go ahead and short out way before that. But hope this video was at least entertaining and informational. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you guys have any ideas on what else it could be, and I'll see you next Tuesday.